Okay, so in this section, we're going to be talking about what it means to truly be an individual as opposed to fitting in or being quote unquote normal. Normal, of course, is a problematic word, but the best definition that I've seen of it is that throughout history, whatever the greatest number of people are doing in any particular area of their lives or any particular social norm will be considered normal. So those of us who fit in maybe have an easier time, but might struggle with some self-limiting aspects or even self-destructive aspects of what is considered normal. Those like myself who never seem to fit in typically experienced a harder time in elementary and junior high school, certainly through high school and even into our adult years. A lot of us very sadly experienced bullying, experienced being or feeling very isolated from our peers. We had maybe a false belief that we were too sensitive, too emotional, too socially anxious, or just too awkward. And if we trace that back, we're likely to find that these are things that we were taught about ourselves. Unfortunately, developmentally, children do tend to be intolerant of things that are different or don't seem to fit in. And for people like myself, I spent an inordinate number of years feeling bad about the fact that I didn't fit in. The underlying assumption there was that I was less than. The experiences in my family of origin and the experiences that I had in public schools strongly reinforce those messages. Which is tragic, of course, but it's based in a larger social myth, which is that being quote-unquote normal is a desirable thing to be. Now, conformity is, of course, inherently self-limiting, but it allows one to fit in or to feel like they belong to whatever it is, your cohort, your class, the kids in the neighborhood, whatever it was. Being different tends to leave one being socially isolated or even rejected. And so, for a lot of us growing up, we experience that not only in our families, but in schools and neighborhoods and other times and places. And so, not fitting in leaves a child with the idea that they are less than. Sadly, experiences of abuse and neglect strongly reinforce that idea. And the real takeaway is the child learns that they are not good enough, not lovable, not acceptable, and sadly for a lot of us those lessons came in the context of not feeling safe. So if you teach a child through neglect or abuse that they don't matter, the child will believe you. The child will believe that they are absolutely lacking and that love and acceptance and have to be earned. They are not freely given. And so this leaves the child in a precarious place where they will set out to earn those things. They will perhaps even live their lives as though they have something to prove. And that was true for me, certainly for a lot of years. And I was fortunate enough to have a good friend towards my late 20s who actually asked me two questions that really changed my life. The first question was, what are you trying to prove? And the second question was, who are you trying to prove it to? And those are two awesome questions for those who are like me, who live in fundamentally unhealthy ways. So the answer to the first question, what was I trying to prove? That I matter, that I was lovable, that I was worthy of friendship and acceptance. Who was I trying to prove it to? Well, in retrospect, I was trying to prove it to anybody that would stand still long enough. But what's sad about that is that when you're living life this way, when you're trying to prove your worth, you will not succeed in proving it to yourself. You will not succeed in trying to prove it to people that ideally would have given love and acceptance freely, particularly your family of origin. And no matter how much you do experience success or how much you attain recognition, it will not transform the way that you feel about yourself. I often recommend a piece of spoken word poetry by a man named Shane Koizan. It's a brilliant piece. It's entitled To This Day. It's available as a TED Talk on YouTube. Highly recommend it. He talks very eloquently about the lifelong, or what are often the lifelong effects of bullying and child abuse on the sense of self, on what it is that we allow into our lives, and the ways in which it warps our self-perception. So, for all of my life, I have been a social misfit. I don't fit into mainstream neurotypical people. And for about 30 years of my life, I felt really bad about that. I very fortunately went into therapy as a client and started exploring why do I believe the things that I believed? Why do I perceive myself the way that I did? And what I learned about that was that this is all learned behavior. I internalized and came to view myself based not on anything that was necessarily directly said to me, but moreover by how I was treated. When you neglect or abuse a child, it communicates a great deal to the child about what their place in life is, about what their value is. And unlearning those lessons is vitally important. I've come to appreciate that recovery, whether it's from mental illness or addiction, requires a great deal of unlearning. And so a little bit at a time, through the process of therapy and the process of allowing myself to have friends, I came to see that a lot of what was taught to me about me was not true. But even when I could recognize what was not true, that didn't necessarily tell me what was true. So allowing supportive, good people into my life gave me a lot of input, gave me a lot of feedback about how good people, healthy people, I should say, perceived me and experienced me, the things that they valued and appreciated about me. And very, very slowly, I was able to internalize those, but that required externalizing and releasing some of the painful lessons that I had been taught, and coming to terms with the fact that I had learned those from people who were sick and selfish, from people who were passing along to me what was given to them. And so the transformative aspect of seeing that being normal is actually pretty boring, and individuality does not fit into social norms, not really. So there's a ton of opportunity in this, and what I would encourage you to do at this point is to think about, if we look at your family of origin, if we look at your childhood, what were the most important takeaways? What were the lessons that were instilled within you about your worth, about whether or not you were lovable, about whether or not there are things about you that were seen as unacceptable? I always encourage folks to do a lot of writing about that and to reflect on that, because you may find some things that may not be true, or you may find some ideas that are very limiting about what's possible for your life and what your true potential is. Okay, on to the next video.